You're listening to Ideal Practice, episode number 27. Today, you get to meet Melanie McGhee, the founder of AAIT, Acceptance and Integration Training. This is going to be good, y'all. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Pitts-Reeves, and with over 2 decades of experience in the private practice world, I've built my 6-figure business while learning a lot of lessons the hard way. This is the first podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of energy, alignment, and strategy to build a practice that is profit-centered, but people-forward. This is the Ideal Practice Podcast. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Ideal Practice. This is Wendy. I am your host, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. We are in for a treat. I know I say that every week, but it's true. Today, I get to introduce you to one of my dearest friends, one of my favorite colleagues, one of my early business partners, and someone that you are going to want to know. Today, you get to hear from Melanie McGhee. Melanie is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of AAIT, Acceptance and Integration Training. If you haven't already heard of this, stay tuned because you're going to be hearing more and more about it as this incredible, literally groundbreaking methodology works its way across the country. I actually believe that this new model of treatment has the potential to change the way we all do what we do. It's that powerful. I want to let you know a little bit about what's coming in this episode so that you will understand kind of where we're going and why this is worth talking about. In the beginning, I will ask Melanie to just share with you the basic concept of what AAIT is, how it works, what a typical session looks like. This really is a method that helps people feel better literally in a matter of minutes. And I know that may sound kind of magical, but that is kind of how it is. And you will learn more about that today. I also asked her to share with you some of the many different types of scenarios where AAIT is being used successfully, because it's not just for psychotherapists. All kinds of folks are using this in their work, including artists, creatives, life coaches, physical therapists, organization specialist. It's kind of amazing to me, all the different ways that this is being used. And then I did ask Melanie to share a little bit about the story of how in the heck she came up with this. What was the process that evolved that led her to this discovery? Like all of us, Melanie too has had her share of self-doubt. She, like all of us, has asked herself sometimes, who am I? Who am I to do this awesome thing? I want you to hear her story about how she has worked through that, because I'm hoping that that too will inspire you. I wanted you to kind of have a roadmap of where we're going in this conversation. So we're going to talk about what it is, how it works, all the different ways this is being used, and how she came up with it to begin with. I hope you enjoy this. It really is amazing. And I can't wait to share this with you. So let's get into it, shall we? So hello, Melanie.
Hi, Wendy.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really, really happy to be with you like this.
I'm so glad you're here. For those who don't know, we have been trying to schedule an interview for months. It's taken us a while to get together. So this is a small accomplishment right off the bat. So I told you guys that one of the things I want you to know today is about a new method that Melanie has created called Acceptance and Integration Training, AAIT for short. We're definitely going to dive into that, but I want to start with a little bit, Melanie, of your kind of backstory. So you're an LCSW, been in the field for a long time. Tell me a little bit about kind of where you started in Utah and kind of how your practice has evolved over time.
Yeah, I mean, like you, Wendy, I feel so lucky to be at this stage in my life and career and to experience such professional satisfaction. It's not anything I ever anticipated. You know, when I started out as a baby social worker finishing up graduate school, two of my favorite teachers told me that if I wanted to master the craft of therapy, I needed to find masters and study with them. So I did that. I have been fortunate to have the best teachers, from Corey Hammond in studying Ericksonian hypnosis to Bob and Mary Goulding from redecision therapy, and Dick Olney, who taught me self-acceptance training, and more recently, well, Marshall Rosenberg, and more recently, Jivarad Slavinsky.
So from the very beginning, and I know that this is true about you because it's something I've heard you talk about many times, from the very beginning, you have been committed to advancing your own skill set by working with some of the best people and seeking advanced training all along the way. So tell us about AAIT. I know that over the last few years, you yourself have evolved as a clinician and as a teacher and have found your way to a whole brand new model and way of working that provides results in a way that no one, I think, has ever seen. And if I could say that I'd love to hear about that. Tell us a little bit about AAIT.
Well, fundamentally, it's about resolving reactivity and uncloaking the true self. So instead of engaging in excavations into the past or looking deeply into the stories of the present, what we're doing with AIT is just engaging clients and ourselves, because we can use all of this for our own self-care, but we're engaging clients in practices that untether them from maladaptive patterns, pain-filled emotions, limiting identities, all those things that keep us bound, trauma, all the things that keep us bound. And we use a spectrum of protocols or practices to integrate polarized psychological energies. The idea here is that the integration of two opposing psychological states can alleviate suffering, can alleviate psychological suffering. So we have a lot of ways of creating that kind of integration. And this tends to resolve the problem. It neutralizes the charged energy and gives clients sustained relief from suffering. And consequentially, one of the things that I think is really interesting that we're seeing pretty regularly is that people describe increases in spiritual well-being and present-focused attention. They talk about feeling more whole and more free, like free to make decisions that are unbound from their conditioning. And that's pretty profound. There are a couple of points that are unique about AIT. Clients do learn practices that empower them to take responsibility for and tend to their inner state. And in that, they discover a source of freedom. And unlike traditional homework, clients tend to do these practices because they get such immediate benefit.
So for those who aren't familiar with this, a lot of people in our particular area are becoming trained in AAIT, acceptance and integration training. So there are more and more practitioners in our area that are doing this kind of work, and it's beginning to trickle out around the country. And I find myself referring people all the time to AAIT practitioners specifically for what I think of as limiting beliefs or unconscious patterns and processes that just nothing else can get to. So they really are bound by it. We can, like in traditional psychotherapy, we can only go so far. When you run into something like there's something here we cannot get to, AAIT has a way of, I think of it as erasing it, like just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's this idea that I was at a conference, and this was a few years back, the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference. And one of the presenters was talking about in the early days, hypnosis was considered really not something that you would bring into the therapy office. It was voodoo. It wasn't blah, 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 and all that about hypnosis. Well, we know now that that's not true. 25 years ago, meditation was not something that we talked about in therapy. We know where we are with that now. This presenter talked about how our next frontier in psychotherapy is non-dual awareness. And this is the space that you're talking about where like you say, it erases it. What happens is the charged energy, and by that I mean thoughts, images, emotions, and body sensations get charged and tangled up. When that charge is neutralized or integrated, it's metabolized. And instead of the pain that they were feeling 15 minutes ago, what's instead there is a kind of open awareness. a glimpse into that non-dual state that is empty of any content other than the presence of being fully present in this moment. And it feels expansive for most people.
Yeah. And relief. There's a lot of relief.
Relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a huge benefit, of course, to the clients, but I want to speak to the huge benefit it is to us as therapists, be able to actually facilitate and see change in almost every session. Almost every session, you really get to see change that is sustained. It's sustainable and it's sustained because we check on it. We don't just leave it there, we check on it later.
So give us an example. Walk us through a typical AAIT session, or maybe you can tell us a story about someone. Sort of give us an example of like what this looks like in real life for people who've never heard of it.
Okay, so I'll walk you through a session I just had this morning. A client who lost her husband a year or more ago after a long, arduous journey with cancer. And she describes her experience as she just feels traumatized, right? AIT comes in, it's 5 phases. The first phase is to seek understanding, where we're really discovering what's alive and what's most important to this person in this moment. What do they really need? Now, like some of the students say that some of AIT students talk about how they got stuck in seeking understanding, like over and over and over in circles and over and over. And with this, it's like a few minutes of seeking understanding. And what was alive for her in this moment was the trauma, the moment that the doctor told them, this is it. This is where we are, all we can do. And so we have it, we have the problem, and I can see the pain on her. So we use something called the fingertip method to resolve trauma. And instead of describing it, because that's very complicated, I can just tell you that it takes just like, this took 10 minutes. This was 10 minutes of our session. Okay. So we have seek understanding. We need to move to the next phase, engage collaboration. What we're doing here is engaging collaboration with each other, deciding specifically what are we going to address in this session? What are we working on? What are we trying to facilitate some relief on? And also the therapist is really holding the awareness that we are collaborating with our client's highest self on behalf of their truest self. And so, it's really, we are aiming to help our clients become more and more established, to uncloak their true self. So that's where our attention is. So once we engage in collaboration, we begin resolving the reactivity. So with this client, I use the method called the fingertip method, disrupting the charged energy of the trauma by oscillating between there and then and here and now, while we have them engage in an intellectual exercise. It's a little difficult to describe, but within just a couple of minutes, like really, this took 10 minutes, she was completely free. So we resolved the reactivity. She knows that this happened. She's no longer wounded by the intrusion of the memory. And so the next step is to verify and stabilize the results. And part of how we verify is we ask very clearly, does this trauma still feel traumatic to you? No. Okay. Is it possible for any tendrils of this to impose itself on you in the future against your will? No. She'll still grieve. But this trauma's done. It's empty. It's been erased. There's no energy in it. So then in stabilizing the results, one of the things that we might do, and I did in this case, for instance, is to ask if she felt a need for forgiveness. It's not a should. And particularly where we live, Wendy, in the Bible Belt, we really want to know if it's a need. It will feel like I'm thirsty. It's a yes or a no. And she said no, and then immediately started crying and said, oh my gosh, I really do. I need to forgive myself. So we use the forgiveness process to expand that energy, because essentially, once we feel the need for forgiveness after a piece of work, forgiveness, the energy of it is right there. It's free to move throughout the system and to do its work. It's nothing you have to make happen. We opened that door for her. And then the next phase is embodiment. So I sent her home with a couple of practices to help her ride the waves of the grief as it arose for her. And so the model is based on these 5 phases. There's 6 principles, but the 5 phases seek understanding, engage collaboration, resolve reactivity, verify and stabilize results, and embody the true self. And together that, it's the acronym SERVE.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, so that's what a typical session would look like. So by the end of the session, she's in a very nice state of being. And then next week she'll come in and I'll start the process over again. I'll seek understanding. But this time, the first thing I'm going to ask is, how do you feel about the trauma that we addressed last week? How do you feel about the work we did? And I'll be specific about what it was, because what we find is that once we have resolved the tension and the situation is empty, people forget that it was ever a problem.
I've heard that too from people who have experienced this, that it's they have trouble even remembering what they were upset about before. Not because
Yes.
they don't remember the event or remember the lessons that came from it or remember the experience, but like the emotion really isn't there. It's just gone. Yeah.
Yeah. And part of what we do in this last phase of embodying is to ask the question, what do you know now that you didn't before, if anything new? Or what are you taking away from this conversation? Because that will really help them give space for the arising of their own inner wisdom. And without fail, if it's not in that moment, it's the next week that they have these profound insights that would have taken us years to get to in therapy, years, like in traditional talk therapy.
Yes. Okay. So this is very helpful to hear about these 5 phases because I don't think I've heard you put it together like that before. So that's new to me.
Mm.
And I will say to people, I've seen Melanie do this. I've experienced it with her. I've seen her teach this in conferences. I've seen this work many, many times. So as you're talking this through, Melanie, I'm kind of going, oh yeah, I remember that and that and that. I recognize this, but I haven't heard you describe it this way before.
Mm.
So for me personally, I find that really, really helpful. And I am instantly picturing what this looks like. And I'll just tell you, I want to, if it's okay with you, can I say to you how I tell clients about it? And then you just tell me if I'm on the right track and it's a good way to say it. Because I tell people, I can't really explain this. It's beyond me, but I'll put it in my lay language the best way I can.
I love it. Me too, yes, I love it, Wendy. Yes.
Well, I'm just thinking about, I mean, you know me, I take things and I have to put it in my own language. But the way, what I tell people is that an AAIT trained practitioner essentially can help you take a powerful emotion, a feeling, an incident, an issue, something that is just really, really, you've got some strong emotion around it, and that they will ask you essentially to imagine being in that state, that place, that emotional place. And that what I've seen and experienced is that you will, when you're saying the fingertip method, it makes me think about tapping, even though it's not tapping, but it's placing fingers at certain key acupuncture points. And that as you hold a spot that the practitioner asks a series of questions while the client imagines, thinks about, goes into whatever that feeling state is. And that then you will have them shift to the other side, use the other hand, acupuncture points on the other side, and we'll have them sort of imagine the opposite of that. So you talk about polarities a lot. What's the opposite of that? What does that feel like? And I'm thinking this is the there and then and the here and now, I think. And that essentially you have them shift back and forth between what feels like completely and totally opposite states in a very specific and structured way. And eventually, fairly quickly, the feelings just collapse and the whole thing, the way I think of it is like it just evaporates, but I know the word is actually integrates.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
super, 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 super rough way of talking about it, but that's kind of how I talk about it. So tell me,
Yeah.
am I right? Am I close?
Well, you're kind of describing one of the processes.
Mm-hmm.
But there are, in the fellowship training group, for instance, I think that there are 21 actually actually 21 protocols that they learn in that. And what you're describing is kind of a conflation of some of that.
Okay.
Because you've seen and experienced me work and do a lot of different things. So it makes sense. So the here and now and there and then, that's one aspect of what's going on while they are psycho-emotionally connected to both. It's so yes, it is very structured, which is also an interesting aspect of this work. Is that 70% of clients prefer their therapist to take a structured approach and to help them determine specific goals. and work towards specific goals. I don't know that 70% of the clients who walk into most therapists' offices actually get that.
I agree.
And with AAIT, we're actually doing that. So part of describing it to people is the how is a little complicated because it's a total paradigm shift,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the how is a little complicated, and that's why people have to be trained in it. But the fundamental understanding, one way of describing this, Wendy, or thinking about this, is that we live in a world of opposites. Day, night, man, woman, up, down, inside, outside. We have the same thing going on psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
Mad, calm, forgiving, resentful, love, hate, fear, freedom. So there's a lot of different ways that we discover what specific opposite is giving us tension, is contributing to the ongoing pattern and tension.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we resolve that, like you said, it's empty. There's no content. And that's a glimpse into the non-dual state, the empty state of awareness.
Mm. And with all apologies to you for my clumsy way of talking about it, y'all, you can tell I have not been through the training. I've just witnessed it and had some experience with it. But
I want to say one more thing, Wendy, about
yeah.
that open space that you're talking about, that erasure, because many of us have heard, and forgive me, Dr. Frankl, Viktor Frankl, and the very famous quote: "Between stimulus and response, there lies a space. Within that space lies our choice, and our choice is the source of our freedom," or something along those lines. So what happens with AAIT is that once we have that inner neutrality, that non-dual empty space, that's the space that Viktor Frankl is referring to. And so in the future, when we might encounter a similar circumstance, there's nothing there to hook onto to trigger us. So in that moment, we have access to a broader perspective and the awareness of more choices. So the conditioned reactivity is dismantled. That's where we find our freedom.
That's real freedom. I love it. So give me some examples of some of the more typical ways that your students, because I know your students are not all necessarily just therapists, folks who are being trained in this, how they are using this in their work, some of the ways that you're seeing this method spread and be implemented.
Yeah, let me think about folks. We have therapists and coaches now in, I think, 17, 18 states. We just had a cohort graduate. They just completed their certification. And so I haven't done a recent count, but we have therapists all over the country now.
That's great.
It's fantastic. It's awesome. And I forgot the question. Sorry, Wendy.
How people are using this. How people are using it. Yeah.
I fall in love with them. So I just was thinking about how great they all are. So let's see. So there's locally at Cornerstone of Recovery, it's been being used for the treatment of substance use disorder. There's a therapist who uses it with prisoners and describes these big, tatted up, burly, well-defended guys just recovering from their trauma and uncovering their own ability to emotionally regulate and de-escalate themselves. It's profound. Wow. What he's doing. Yes. So it's also being used to treat anxiety, depression, issues related to sexuality and sexual pleasure, gender, parenting, of course, grief and loss, perinatal and infertility issues, ADHD. Coaches are using it for things like, ADHD coaches, uncovering your muse as an artist, like getting past the things that inhibit you as an artist, whether it's a writer or visual media, spiritual direction for spiritual evolution and unfolding. There's someone who uses it to help clients declutter and release the emotional attachment to that, emotional eating, emotional overeating. Those are some of the things that people are using it for. And with children, I mean, the youngest so far is 4, the oldest is 86.
Wow.
Yeah, children and teens love it because they don't have to go into these long stories about tell me about your mother and what do you feel and all that. They don't have to do that. So they really dig it.
So Some of this I know, some of this I have not known before. That's a much broader range of types of situations that I hadn't even thought of. Actually, I love the
Yeah, we
uncovering your
really,
muse.
yes. I
Yeah.
mean, what we're looking for is how we can help someone resolve any reactivity associated with a problem, an experience, a belief, and this will also include trauma or some goal. So for coaches, they really learn to refine their understanding and ability to help clients discern the obstacle between them and the goal and then transcend it.
Hmm.
So then they move towards their goal more quickly. They're not bound up by all the mindset issues or all the reasons why they couldn't do the thing, whatever it was.
So moving towards a goal as opposed to healing from a problem or resolving a problem.
Yeah, for coaches, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's their scope of practice really to work with trauma, and it's a rare coach who hasn't done work where they don't
Yeah.
encounter trauma.
Yeah. True.
Right?
True. True.
Have, to be more trauma informed, I would say that's certainly part of the training.
So that's really exciting. So I didn't know that. I had no idea that you had spread out to so many states, 18, 17, 18 states. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. That's
yeah, we're in.
fantastic. Congratulations, because I know that has become a legacy work for you.
Mm.
So I'd love to hear, like, how did you come to develop this whole new way of working? The evolution that you've been through as this has sort of articulated and become a thing. This has become a thing. you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think that one of the early things I did was when I was invited to join Dick Olney's training group when I was living in Salt Lake City. He was the founder of self-acceptance training. And at that time, I had two small children, and flying from Salt Lake City to Berkeley, California once a month was a huge deal.
Mm.
And I really garnered the support of my people. I told a couple of friends I was thinking about it. I asked for their advice. I, of course, talked to my husband and garnered his support. And he has been tremendously supportive all the way around when I've wanted to fly off somewhere because I wanted to learn something from somebody. So I spent
Mm.
a couple of years in San Francisco, going to back and forth between Salt Lake City and Berkeley, and learning self-acceptance training. And then when I left Salt Lake City, I continued studying with Dick Olney via phone. We had phone consultation. And after he passed away, I'm continuing, like I took that advice, find masters and study with them. So I looking for another mentor, and wasn't finding one yet. And I took some training and did a little study with Marshall Rosenberg, who is the founder of Nonviolent Communication.
Mm.
Really profound work. But it still wasn't it. I just kept up with my CEUs and kind of gave up on finding another mentor. It's like I lost my enthusiasm somewhere along the way and just sort
Yeah.
of gave up on that. And then a friend of mine told me about a psychologist from Serbia who was going to be in Louisville, Kentucky, which is about a 4-hour drive from here. And she told me I really needed to go see him. And I'm like, I'm not interested.
Huh.
And bugged me. I mean, she really poked me. And so she said, I know what you're up to with this confluence of spirituality and psychotherapy. And so you need to go there. So I did. I met a friend and we drove up to Louisville together. And I was only planning to stay for 3 days, Wendy. I had appointments the rest of the week. But by the end of the first morning, I was totally hooked. I was in the
Huh.
presence of the master and I knew it. I might not understand every word because of difference in, I was adjusting to his accent.
Mm-hmm.
He was a master. So I canceled everything, arranged housing, and got myself booked for the rest of the time he was there. And then it was never looking back. I was back and forth between Europe and Belgrade, and where he lived in Serbia, and back and forth to Europe and Zoom studying when he would figure out Zoom, which was a challenge because at the time, I mean, he was in his early 70s, I think, maybe like 60s, early 70s when I started studying with him.
Mm.
He just passed away this year.
Mm.
I think he was 83. Uh,
Mm.
yeah. So anyway, I just made a commitment, and I never, ever planned to teach. I did not plan to teach. I was really happy with my little practice at home. I could be my barefoot therapist here in Blount County, just doing my own work. And I was happy with it. Clients were getting good results. But I felt like I needed to understand what was happening in my office. So I kept going. I kept traveling back and forth and just kept reading and studying and studying and reading. And I let it go for a while. But there was this one client who said, "Can we just do this thing that you were doing with the eyes and like the this thing?" And okay. And so I realized there's really something to this. My clients were getting such good benefit.
Mm.
When Jivarad asked me to start teaching, I was in Munich and he asked me to start teaching, and I really hesitated. This was around the time, Wendy, this was before I sought out coaching with you to help me get back on track, but I hesitated, and I told him I was hesitating, because my dad had just died, and my European friends thought I was nuts because he didn't ask anybody to do this.
Wow. So that was a huge compliment to you.
And this would mean that I would become one of 4 people in the world trained at that level.
Got it.
And I still hesitated. So, being who he is, he laughed and suggested that I integrate hesitating and moving forward. So I did, and it changed the game. I think another key turning point, there were like a couple of key turning points. This was one, and another one was when a friend of mine, also a student of Jivarad's, pointed out to me that what I was doing, this is Satyan Raja, he's another trainer. He pointed out to me that what I was doing was really more than what we had learned from Jivarad.
There you go. I was looking for that. That's what I'm looking for.
I didn't know, Wendy. I couldn't see it because I love my teachers so much that for me, it's all about everything I learned from them. And Satyan really encouraged me to codify what I was doing, to reflect on bits and pieces. And in that reflection, the model just revealed itself. And it was getting such reliable results. It was unmistakable. And so I finally just realized that if I just kept all of this to myself, that would feel so disrespectful to my teachers. So this is really, AAIT is really an offering to them.
That's beautiful. But it is the culmination of 30 plus years of learning where the way I hear that, or the way I'm receiving that, is that you have done your own work extensively throughout your career. And as you said, when you were in the presence of a master, you knew it and you got everything you could from them, but then you grew beyond them, which is also, I think, what any teacher wants to have happen, actually. Like, I think that's part of it also. I love the idea of you honoring, respecting, loving these people who have influenced you so much. And I know Jivarad and Dick Olney were the two in particular that I know were very precious to you, that you were able to take all of this and I don't even think you knew that you were doing it. You were just sort of pulling together all these different things and essentially created your own, Melanie's way of doing things and stepped into mastery yourself. That's what your colleagues were seeing in you. 21 protocols, 6 principles, 5 phases, 18 states.
Right? Wow. Yeah. Well, Wendy, like you said, we've known each other a really long time. And when I hired you and asked you to help me, to get in the boat with me, I remember that's how I framed it. Just get in the boat with me. I need somebody else to put their oars in the water with me right now. And one of the biggest things that came out of that work for me, in addition to really appreciating how important systems are, but still learning that lesson. But one of the big things that came out of that was the very initial mindset work that I had to do to transcend that idea of who am I to?
Who am I to?
Yeah, who am I to introduce a new model that totally shifts the paradigm of how change happens in a therapy office? Like, who am I to do that? I'm just a therapist who blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm a therapist who has close to 44 decades of experience, and I've studied with masters.
And have a really big idea.
Yeah, I've got a really big idea.
Yeah. So who am I to do this? Who am I not to do this?
Yes. Yeah.
And it doesn't in any way diminish anyone you have trained under to honor that and move beyond that. That's how the world evolves, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So how has this impacted your business? How has this impacted who you are, how you're showing up in the world today? Tell me, what's happening with your practice, with your business, and with the trainings. Tell us where you are with all this.
Well, I'm currently in process of moving the body of work over to the Alliance for Integrated Awareness. It's a nonprofit that we have created to advance social justice and mental health care through service projects, conducting research about AAIT, and certifying practitioners in AAIT. We found that one of the things that we've discovered, Wendy, after, we have 51 people we've trained so far. And we found that for the most part, many of these therapists come from some form of means, and that affects the downline care that they can give. So a lot of therapists who are serving at-risk populations, and working in community organizations, they may not have the resources to invest in their own advanced care, and so their advanced skills. So that affects their feeling of efficacy, and they are at risk for burnout. So we wanted to do something about that and create a structure that can support the learning and development of all therapists who want to be trained in AIT to be able to access that care, access that training.
This is
Yeah,
brand new. This is like a brand new
it's
development.
it's brand new. We've been working on it since last October. And so it's gaining steam. We're putting together volunteer teams, and our first service project provides therapy to foster care alums. So the AAIT therapy specifically, so acceptance and integration training, practitioners who are trained in that are providing therapy for foster care alums. So those folks who have moved out of foster care, so from the teenage years up to age 30. That's our first project, our first program.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're doing, because you have created this, and y'all, when she says it's a matter of minutes, she's not kidding.
Mm-hmm.
There are layers, as there are with so many things, right? So you resolve one layer of an issue, and I mean the work can be ongoing, but the actual resolution, the actual process itself, really does just take a matter of minutes. And I've watched Melanie get, if I can say this, get more and more impatient with traditional psychotherapy, because like it doesn't have to be that way anymore, y'all. It just doesn't, right?
Ah, yeah.
And so what you're doing with this new nonprofit is you're taking something that you have developed in the for-profit world. It's making a difference in a big way all over the place, but you are now transferring that into a parallel platform where you can get this very necessary training into the hands of clinicians who may not be able to get this kind of training on their own, and who are working with populations that are some of the hardest populations to work with.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. All of the training now will go through Aya, so all of it's being moved over. I mean, what's very cool, Wendy, is like you said, I mean, you and I have both been very fortunate and have worked hard to develop successful businesses. So this training that we're doing through my company, Illumined Life, is now going to be moved. All of that's going to move over to Aya. So it gives a place and a structure for us to be able to continue to investigate its efficacy and to create a structure that will support its integrity and its evolution. So
Wow.
I'm very, very excited to have a means that this can really be held for the future.
I was going to say to continue to grow and evolve, be supported, to expand, and not be all dependent on you either.
Yeah, can't be,
Right.
because I love it and I feel fortunate at this stage in my career to be so lit up by what I do. It's really, I mean, it's such a boon. And at the same time, I'm 63,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's going to be a time and this is what's cool. We already have people who are trained. We have Bobby McNamara is a very skilled trainer, and LCSW. We're developing trainers. We've got a pipeline. We have people waiting in the wings saying, please train me to be a trainer.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. I know you
Yeah.
need that. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are so many things about social work in particular. I'm just going to speak specifically to social work, where folks get into social work because they want to make a difference. And depending upon where you are in your career, where you are in your life, and what populations you are working with at any given time, many of us, if not all of us, at some time or another, find ourselves working in situations or with populations where the problems seem intractable, multi-generational, multifaceted. It is so easy to feel once you get past that initial excitement that we all have early on, it's
Yeah,
easy to feel like nothing I ever do is going to make any difference. I can't, the problems are too much. The suffering is too great. I can't really help here. And you really are tackling that and challenging that head on.
absolutely. Absolutely. You just need minutes with somebody to help them get relief. Absolutely.
And you can apply these practices to yourself. So one of the things I do tell, another thing I tell people when I'm referring them is that not only do you get the help that you need from a practitioner, but you will be trained in how to do this yourself so that you are empowered in a way that you haven't been before to find your own quick relief when you run into things along the way. So tell me about how AAIT is helping practitioners themselves.
Well, I mean, we know at this stage, I don't have those numbers and figures in front of me from WHO, but we know that those of us in mental health are at significant risk for burnout. The numbers are really, really high post-pandemic or during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And we also understand that from WHO that there are three components of burnout. One is exhaustion, one is inefficacy, a feeling of inefficacy,
Mm-hmm.
and one is a feeling of cynicism or negativity,
Yeah.
right? So with AAIT, not only can you help your clients do this, but in doing your own work, you begin to address those three elements. And so that in itself sets you up to prevent burnout. In the course of the training, one of the things that we really learn is how to quickly assess where do you want to put your attention for the session. And that translates with your client, and that translates very quickly to how, if you spent 15 minutes with yourself every day, what would you want to address? So people are rapidly learning to take responsibility for and tend to their inner state, and in that discover their own freedom. So clients, as therapists, we have the means to mitigate the effects of exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy because you actually are experiencing change. And I think we underestimate the value of that when we're sitting in a room, either looking at a screen or across from another person, hour after hour, and not experiencing change or the impact of our work. That's wounding. So we address that right off the bat because people get change. So you feel the whole idea of imposter syndrome just goes away. Now, granted, while you're learning it, like Bobby is fond of saying, it's hard until it isn't. So that idea of imposter, it just goes away. You don't feel like an imposter because your people are better.
So over the years, I'm sure you've had this too. Many times I've had clients say something like, I don't know how you do this all day. I don't know how you can listen to people's problems all day. Gosh, this must be exhausting. This must be the most depressing work in the world. Mm-hmm. And I always say, no, it's not depressing at all because I do get to see people get better. And when I have been in a role of supervisor of any kind of clinical supervision, I've always told people when you have those moments where something almost magical happens with a client or where you see somebody like something really good happens because of the work you're doing, remember that because it gets you through the times when you don't feel that so much. The cool thing about this is that you're providing a tool, a series of tools, a series of ways of working that enable practitioners to not only see that level of that breakthrough all the time over and over again with people. So that sense of like what I'm doing matters. What I'm doing here really is it's working, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So not only do I get to have that, so that because that's what drives all of us. We don't get into this because we want to sit around feeling helpless all the time, right? So it absolutely speaks to the core of what makes us who we are, and also gives us a few tools to get ourselves through on the days that we're having a little hard time ourselves. Let's talk about a win-win for everybody. It's not just good for your clients; it's good for you. And I will add, it's also good for your business because there are so many benefits about adding this to your practice that I think you should think about it. So I'll just say that. Yeah, it's a win-win.
I both have known people who have been filled their private practice like that.
Quickly, very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you really love seeing people get better fast. That's the thing.
Mhm. That's the thing.
So you have followed a path, like you said earlier today. You said just following one spark to the next, to the next.
Mhm.
And oftentimes went sideways when everyone else went straight. You zigged when other people zagged. You have listened to your own heart, your own intuition, and it has led you into places that you never expected to go. And along the way, you were absorbing other people's big ideas and then came up with your own that you didn't even know you had, and
Mhm.
had the courage and the clarity and the confidence, I'm going to say, to step into that and follow it and look where it's going. This is so good. And where I want to go with this is for the folks who are listening. Many of you also have something inside that is waiting to be born. Many of you have an idea that's percolating. There's something floating around the edges that maybe it hasn't quite coalesced yet, but there's something there that you find yourself being drawn to over and over and over again. There's a pattern in how you help. There are certain things you find yourself saying to people over and over. There's an itch that you get that you don't know how to scratch, but it's really, really important. I want you all to hear Melanie's story. And I don't want you to go, yeah, she can do that, but that doesn't mean I can. I want you to listen to this story and go, gosh, if she can do that, who knows what I can do?
Absolutely.
Because that's true. It's
It's
true.
so true. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true.
And what other brilliant breakthrough ideas are out there just waiting to be born in the heart of a healer who is hearing this? That's what I love to hear. So, Melanie, what would you suggest to someone else who, how can people learn more about AAIT? Where do they find you? If someone wants to step into this, what's the best way for them to move forward?
Wendy, I don't want to answer that, but I want to also speak for just a moment to what you just said about
Okay.
other healers and their big ideas, because I've been mentoring therapists for a long time now, for a very, very long time. And I think that, one of the things as we encounter our big ideas, one of the things that I think is most valuable for us, particularly as a group of people, is to get support to keep on track with the inner work so the big idea doesn't become encumbered with the delusion of some exaggerated importance.
Mm.
It's really important to continue to find a way and to get the support to do our inner work, because these big ideas can trap us with some delusion of an exaggerated importance that then we have to bounce to some polarity of I'm an imposter, how could I? I mean, it's going to absolutely trigger the opposite.
I love that. That is
For
so
me.
important. Say that
Yeah.
again. This is really important.
Yeah, when we get wrapped up and we're not doing our inner work, our big ideas, the goals associated with them, and the big idea itself can get really encumbered with a delusion of a kind of exaggerated importance. Some part of us subconsciously that's not aligned with that, for whatever reasons, is going to swing that big idea into the opposite direction. We'll fall into imposter syndrome. We'll fall into all the reasons we can't make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
finding support to help us, keep on track of here's the goal, what's the obstacle, what's between me and that goal, resolving that work and moving to the next step. That kind of support is really valuable for people who have big ideas.
I love that. So when you step into the way I would say that is that when you step into what's possible or you get a glimpse of what's possible, there's going to be a part of you that's going to naturally fight that. Who am I? It goes back to
Yes,
who am I, right? Who am
yes,
I to do this?
yes. Yeah.
Right. And so I love the delusion of your importance because it's not about you. It's about the idea. It's about the service. It's about the
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Love it. So how can
Yeah.
people learn more about AAIT or what's the best place to start for people who just want to explore learning more?
Well, if you just want to explore learning more, I would encourage you to go to the website and sign up for the self-care sanctuary
Mm.
reminders. And that's something that I started in March of 2020, early in the pandemic when everything shut down. And I started this free group for therapists. And so it's just an open door. We were meeting weekly. Now we're meeting monthly. The first Fridays at noon. It's just an hour. And we do a little self-care AAIT style. there's nothing to learn. It's because I actually discourage anybody from trying to learn in these things. This is really just as an offering for you to experience this work as a way to take care of yourself. So that's one thing. The other thing, if you're interested and you want to just dive in, you could also apply for the fellowship training group. That's the certification process. It's a certification program, or you could go to the website and look at any of the practitioners and give them a call and ask them about their experience. I mean, it's a great community. There's a lot of ways to jump on board and find us. We're on Facebook. We have an AAIT community on Facebook. But I think the best place, if you just want to taste it, to really experience it for yourself, is the Self-Care Sanctuary on the first Fridays at noon Eastern.
And I second that. I hear people talking about that, and I know how powerful it has been for the folks that have been attending that. So that's great. And you started offering that, Melanie, didn't you, during the pandemic, I think?
Yeah. I see a lot of healing arts professionals in my private practice, and it was becoming very clear to me that we were going to be in trouble if we didn't have something,
Yeah.
So I opened it wide, and we had people from all over the world during the pandemic show up, and now it's just anywhere from 6 to 20 people will show up, and it's just a great way to take care of ourselves.
Great way to take care of yourself and get a taste of what this is all about at the same time. That's beautiful. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I haven't told you this, but I have a colleague who is new to the field that I was telling about AAIT, and she contacted me the other day and said, guess what? I've signed up. I'm going to training.
Gosh.
I was like, yay for you, girl.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
that's
really great.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you.
This is so good. Last question, is there anything else that you feel like you want to say to make this conversation complete?
I keep wanting to say never give up, and I'm not really sure why. I think maybe because I have a quote from the Dalai Lama in front of my desk that's never give up. No matter what's going on, never give up. And I think that as healing arts professionals, we came into this work with an intention to support the upliftment of humanity. Never give up in your aim to discover your path to doing that in such a way that is satisfying and fulfilling for you.
Yes. Perfect place to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Melanie, for being here today. Thank you for giving us your time. I know how much you have going on. Thank you for leading us through this new way of being and giving us all tools that I think can literally change lives, change the world. It's really good stuff.
Thank you, Wendy. Such a pleasure.
All right, my friends, with that, I'm going to bring this to a close. I will make sure that all the proper links are in the show notes below. I really encourage you all to check those out. And I just want to add a little bit of emphasis to Melanie's invitation to join her for the Self-Care Sanctuary. I really do think that is a lovely way for you to experience this. In fact, that's how this contact of mine recently has stepped into it, because I sent her there. And next thing you know, poof, she's in. So check that out for your own sake. And I will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye now.